You don't have to go to hell. You're in hell. This is hell. This is hell. This is hell.
Because democracy basically means government by the people, of the people, for the people. But the people are retarded.
Then strangled them, and finally dismembered their bodies.
Right.
Then do
And homelessness and all that.
And now, the voice you've been waiting for.
There is a secret song at the center of the world, and its sound is like razors through flesh. I'm here to turn up the volume.
I'm kind of retarded.
Well, I wasn't planning on taking a week off last week, but about 10 days ago I had some surgery on my face, and I figured since it was an outpatient surgery I should be fine, but shit, I'm still in a lot of pain right now, and a week ago, I was in no shape to be doing this shit.
I'm on them Broward County Tic Tacs.
But I've just been sitting back and watching this hilarity where they're trying to pretend like the very same vice president who was scoring lower on popularity than Dick fucking Cheney is suddenly the most exciting and invigorating candidate we've ever seen. And look, she's doing these big rallies for thousands of people. Never mind, of course, that there are musical guests playing free concerts at these same events. I'm sure that's not what's drawing these people. It's just because they're so excited about Kamala. I saw this one headline and it made me laugh because on top of it being a bunch of bullshit, it doesn't even make any sense. Trump backs down after bailing on debating Harris? Well, first of all, he never really bailed. He just said, yeah, you know what? Let's wait until we lock in this debate to see if she's actually going to be the candidate. Because the last guy that was definitely going to be the candidate got switched out right after I fucking destroyed him. Which I don't think is a very unreasonable position to take. But now that she's the official candidate, he said, yeah, alright, we'll do the debate. Let's do 3 of them. And hopefully that happens because much like with the Biden debate, it's going to be the moment where a lot of people for the first time see just what a dipshit she is. In the very same way that for 3.5 years the media protected the normies from seeing Joe Biden's most senior moments, they were also protecting the public from seeing Kamala's word salad moments, of which there were many.
My mother she would give us a hard time sometimes, and she would say to us, I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? You exist in the context of all in which you live and what came before you. I'm doing a tour of the library here and talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs. And there is such great significance to the passage of time when we think about a day in the life of our children.
I'm not sure I understood all that. Would you mind repeating it in English, perhaps?
But now doing a primetime debate and all the interest and eyeballs that are going to be on that, and she is not good on her feet. You remember that interview she did back in 2020?
You're very different in the policies that you've supported in the past. You're considered the most liberal United States senator.
Somebody said that, and it actually was Mike Pence on the debate stage, but...
Yeah. Well, actually, the nonpartisan GovTrack has rated you as the most liberal senator. You supported the Green New Deal. You supported Medicare for all.
Look at that. She froze up with the least possible amount of pushback from this interviewer. She didn't know what the fuck to do. And this isn't even hardball pushback. This is a softball made to look like it's got a little bit of heat on it, but she just can't fucking believe that this interviewer isn't sitting there trying to lick her asshole. I mean, that's what everybody else does, and that's what everybody's done since. That's why she isn't holding any press conferences where she might get asked an actual question. and why she's not gonna sit down with any interviews unless the person is absolutely on her side. It's like the exact opposite of when Trump goes for an interview. He waltzes right into the lion's den, sits down with people that he knows are gonna be adversarial, and they come out sorta swinging.
You have told 4 congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabbit to describe black district attorneys. You've attacked black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist. You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort. So my question, sir, now that you are asking black supporters to vote for you, why should black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think I've ever been asked a question so in such a horrible manner. First question. You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. And I think it's disgraceful that I came here in good spirit. I love the black population of this country. I've done so much for the black population of this country, including employment, including opportunity zones with Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, which is one of the greatest programs ever for black workers and black entrepreneurs. I've done so much, and and I say this, historically black colleges and universities were out of money, they were stone cold broke, and I saved them, and I gave them long-term financing, and nobody else was doing it. I think it's a very rude introduction. I don't know exactly why you would do something like that. And let me go a step further. I was invited here, and I was told my opponent, whether it was Biden or Kamala, I was told my opponent was going to be here. It turned out my opponent isn't here. You invited me under false pretense.
Although technically you could make the case for this not being false pretenses. When they said that his opponent would be there, they were referring to the interviewer. And he was way more polite to her than I would have been. It's like, Jesus, that's how you want to open up the interview.
What a bitch.
And this is probably the most interested I've ever been in seeing a vice presidential debate. I don't know what kind of research Kamala and her team was doing on these possible picks that were on her short list, but they sure picked a winner in this guy. And the news has been doing their best to try to run cover on this whole stolen valor story.
Waltz did make a comment, speaking to a group, he's done it a couple of times, where he has used language that has suggested that he carried weapons in a fighting situation. As you know, with your contact with the military, I know from coming from a military family, there is a difference between being in a combat area, being involved at a time of war, and actually being in a position where people are shooting at you. There is no evidence that at any time Governor Waltz was in a position of being shot at, and some of his language could easily be seen to suggest that he was. So that is absolutely false when he said that about gun rights out there.
And that was actually the most pointed piece I could find on it. Most of the people like ABC are doing it much fluffier. Early on when you had people start talking about this, you had CNN trying to run cover and say that, oh, he's accusing him without evidence. But the only problem with that is the evidence is fucking everywhere you look. People like ABC, well, they were just showing you this one clip and only the end of it at that.
Hope woke up like many of you did 5 weeks ago and Dad said, Dad, you're the only person I know who's in elected office. You need to stop what's happening with this. I'll take my kick in the butt for the NRA. I spent 25 years in the Army and I hunt. And I gave the money back, and I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
And then they kind of
Hope
try
woke
to
up like
imply
many of you
that
did
that's
5
like
weeks
the
ago and
only
Dad
time
said,
he
Dad, you're the
really
only
said
person I
it.
know
It
who's
all
in
dates
elected
back
office.
to
You need
this
to stop what's
video.
happening
And
with
oh,
this.
well,
I'll
he's
take
saying
my
that
kick in
he
the butt
just
for the NRA. I spent
misspoke.
25
Because
years
after
in the
all,
Army
that's
and
what
I
this
hunt.
whole
And I gave
controversy
the
is
money back, and I'll
about,
tell you
is
what I
him
have been
saying
doing. I've
that
been voting
he
for
carried a
common sense
weapon to
legislation
war
that
when he
protects
was
the
never
Second
actually
Amendment.
deployed in combat. And that, oh, he says that he's a retired sergeant major when he actually retired as a master sergeant because he didn't complete the training that was required of him. And this is just all being blown out of proportion. But then there's this.
He abandoned us, you know. I mean, what the hell kind of leader does that? I mean, he just, as soon as the shots were fired in Iraq, he turned and ran the other way and hung his hat up and quit.
We'll get to Barron's new message for voters in a moment. But this all starts years earlier when Barron says Wall's misleading statements about his military service first led him to come forward in the fall of 2018.
So you try to get this message out, but Minnesota's largest newspaper checks it out, says it's 100% true, but yet refuses to print it.
When I hung the phone up, I said, what the hell is this, North Korea?
Back in 2005, a warning order went out to the 1st Battalion, 125th Field Artillery to mobilize for a mission to Iraq. At the time, Walls served as the unit's highest non-commissioned officer, but months later, Walls would retire from the Guard, avoid the deployment, and run for Congress. Tom Behrens was next in line for the position and was asked to take his place. Behrens would go on to serve in Iraq on a nearly 2-year deployment as a command sergeant major. All while Walls began using that title as a congressman. Behrens says he first contacted Walls with his concerns, sending these letters to Washington. They all went unanswered.
But then we fast forward to the election in 2018 in Minnesota, and you try at that time to get people's attention with this story and also with what seems to be a very misleading statement that he continued to make about his service.
It kind of just sat there, when he was a congressman, he bragged that he was a command sergeant, retired command sergeant major. I'm the highest ranking person ever in the House, and all this lie that he was telling. The state of Minnesota came out after 2018, after this was exposed, and they said, well, he can say that he served as a command sergeant major, but he can't say he's a retired one because he's not.
And that's what he was saying.
And he was saying that, and there was lots of lots of cards coming in the mail, for him to be elected. They said right on there he's a retired command sergeant major, just tooting his own horn, just hanging on the coattails of people that actually are command sergeant majors that went through all the process and put all the time in.
A spokesperson for the Minnesota National Guard said Walls wasn't able to retire as a command sergeant major since he failed to complete coursework and requirements related to the rank. Verified documents show the Army corrected his service record. Walls was reduced in rank to an E8 Master Sergeant after retirement and his conditional promotion. Alpha News again asked Governor Walls if he's using the Command Sergeant Major rank on his campaign website for political gain this year. A spokesperson said this has been in the news before and pointed us to a past story where Walls said, quote, normally this type of partisan political attack only comes from one who's never worn a uniform.
It's stolen valor is really what it is. I don't know of anybody else that's done what he's done. But we called it the truth about Tim Walls.
In 2018, Behrens gave the story the full court press.
We, retired command sergeant majors of the Minnesota National Guard, feel it is our duty and responsibility to bring forth the truth as we know it concerning his service record. I put together information on it and I sent it out to every single radio station and newspaper and TV station I could in the state. The bottom line in all of this is gut-wrenching and sad to explain. When the nation called, he quit.
Twin Cities TV stations and the Star Tribune were silent, even after Behrens says the newspaper checked it all out. The Star Tribune endorsed Walls in 2018 for governor. Between lockdowns, riots, unchecked crime, and a charred police precinct, Behrens felt he had no choice but again to come forward.
Allowing that to be burned down was just like having the Alamo get burned down. It's like, no, you defend that to the last man. If he would have went to Iraq, he'd still be hiding under his desk over there. Because that's just the cowardice that I seen portrayed with him.
So how about when he also comes out and he calls you guys 19-year-old cooks?
I'd take any 19-year-old cook before I'd go to war with him. I don't know how he could even utter such a statement. I mean, it's just absolutely sad.
So this election year, it's all built up again to Behrens' new grain bin message.
He called Jacob Fry an abject failure. So I was like, that's what he is.
Walls is a traitor, also made a return.
And the last one I put together, he said it himself too, as well, if they don't like my job, they can vote me out. So I wrote, vote him out. We need to vote him out.
And considering that guy is the command sergeant major that replaced him and actually deployed with his troops after he ran off like a little bitch, I'd say that he's a pretty credible source. And lying about a service record for any kind of gain, including political gain, is a crime, which is enough of an outrage for those of us who actually did deploy to Iraq or Afghanistan and didn't get to go, oh, well, you know what, no thank you. I'm gonna go run for Congress instead. But compounding that bullshit is the fact that he is using that embellished service record as his credentials for calling for gun control. Lots of people do that, and it makes my fucking blood boil. Oh, well, I carried a weapon of war, and I don't think they should be in civilian hands.
I appreciate your input, but please, fuck off.
And a lot of the people that say shit like that, the biggest fucking hazard they faced when they were deployed was getting a paper cut sitting behind a desk. Which is another thing. You're a fucking command sergeant major. You're not gonna be doing patrols and kicking people's doors in. You were gonna be sitting behind a fucking desk, and you couldn't handle that? And another thing, when he was sitting there talking about some of his common sense ideas for making people safer, did you catch this part?
I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states.
Now, for those of you that don't know what reciprocal carry means, states that you have to go through a background check and a little class and then you get a permit to concealed carry. Reciprocal carry means if you got that permit in, say, Georgia, and then you want to come down here to Florida, the process is basically the same. Florida says, we're going to honor your Georgia concealed carry permit. And he's saying we need to do away with that. Like we have some kind of crime wave of people with concealed carry permits going across state lines to commit crimes. I would love for somebody to give me one possible explanation as to how that could do any fucking good for any fucking buddy.
I would love to hear this.
So would I.
And also, from what I understand, this guy is getting credit for the coining of the calling Republicans weird shit.
You know it, you feel it. These guys are creepy, and yes, just weird as hell. That's what you see.
Although it's kind of hard to tell because it seemed like everybody on every channel started using that on the same fucking day.
These guys are just weird. That's where they are.
As weird and creepy as J.D. Vance.
Super weird idea from J.D. Vance.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's quite weird. They're just plain weird.
Just plain weird.
Just plain weird.
That stuff is weird. They come across weird, and then they start being weird. Yeah, they're weird.
Being a really weird.
He's such a weirdo.
Donald Trump and his weirdo running mate are weird. Deeply and profoundly weird. They are weird.
These Republicans just being weird, it's just weird. It's really weird.
Republican weirdness.
Weird.
Just plain weird.
What was weird was... That seems very weird. It's weird behavior.
Weird.
Weird people on the other side.
It's weird ideas. Weird.
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 Just plain weird.
Plain weird.
Weird people. Weird.
You're being so weird.
Vance has done something more extreme, more weird.
Weird.
Super weird.
Weird. So, Sam, weird is the word here.
And I'm sure this was heavily focus group tested, and for some reason they decided that, yeah, this is a great line of attack.
What I really want, I want your soul. That's right, I want your soul. Your soul.
Maybe it's just a symptom of extreme denial and projection. And I know I'm no kind of expert on political trends and whatnot, but it just seems to me that making weirdness a negative attribute in this political cycle isn't really something the left should be doing right now. But I mean, hey, if that's what you think would be wise. And at this little event where Kamala spoke and introduced him on stage as her VP candidate for the first time, a lot of people were pointing out the weird moment where Tim Walz went to fucking shake his wife's hand and then she's like, "What? No, hug me." And as a result of that, I think a lot of people missed whatever the fuck just happened to Kamala's husband. You see that? It looks like somebody just shoved his dick in a light socket. But anyways, enjoy the shit show while it lasts, because whatever comes on next is going to be a lot less enjoyable, however this turns out. Whether we don't even have an election, or they decide to do a giant, or maybe they'll just go ahead and let Trump win and let the whole shit come crashing down on his head. And there was also this clip of Jamie Raskin floating around that a lot of people are trying to dismiss as nothing.
You know, they want to kick it to Congress, so it's going to be up to us on January 6, 2025 to tell the rampaging Trump mobs that he's disqualified. And then we need bodyguards for everybody in Civil War conditions.
What the fuck did you just say?
And then we need bodyguards for everybody in Civil War conditions.
Fuck you.
This guy is not a Joe Nobody up there on Capitol Hill. This is one of the fucking shot callers. Him saying that they're gonna need bodyguards for everybody in Civil War conditions. And of course all because the 9 justices didn't do their job. And by do their job, I mean interpret the 4th Amendment in a way that benefits us.
Aha!
And I think that no matter which way this ends up going and how this ends up playing out, having a divided America and Americans killing one another in massive numbers is something that's going to be on the menu. It benefits too many of the power structures in too many ways, so you need to act accordingly. Sláinte.
All I have in this world is my thoughts and my word, and I don't break them for no one. You understand? So say good night to the bad guy. 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 Come on. Come on. Look at you now.